And we're back, and I'll be sharing lessons today from Psalm 106 to 107. These psalms are a call to praise the Lord for his goodness and his mercy. And there are a number of psalms with verses that have the first line of this verse of this psalm, which says, "Oh, give thanks to the Lord for his good and his mercy endures forever." Yeah. And this is one of them. The psalmist calls on God to favor him as he had done the Israelites, and he proceeded to recount the numerous times that Israel disobeyed God after he had delivered them from Egypt, yet the Lord remained faithful to his people, forgiving them and delivering them again and again. Really, who wouldn't want that kind of favor? I mean, I put myself in the psalmist's shoes and just imagine just saying, God, look at all the things that you have done. Please do the same for me, He highlighted how God faithfully kept the covenant that his people broke and issued a call for the people to praise the Lord. And quite honestly, I think anytime you remember the things that God does for you or has done for you, the natural response should be praise. Now, there was something that came up to this is just a fun fact. I used to think that Abraham was the only person who ever got accounted, where they said, oh, and it was accounted to him as righteousness in the Bible. But here I see that that verse, it says Abraham believed God and it was accounted to him for righteousness, Genesis 15:6. But in verse 30 to 31, we see that Phinehas, remember Phinehas was Eleazar's son, a priest, who stood up and intervened at the plague, intervened when the Israelites sinned in the wilderness. When, if you remember, when the one guy brought in an Amorite woman into his tent, and he got up and he killed them both, and then the plague was stopped, and that was accounted to him for righteousness. I saw here, and I was like, oh wow, that's very interesting. The psalmist recounted Israel's unfaithfulness to God through the generation, and as he did that, it was very clear that God's mercy was constant through it all, even when they were in exile. Because in Psalm 40, it says, he also made them to be pitied by those who carried them away captive. Now, in Psalm 107, that was a psalm that was a call, just like Psalm 106, for people to give thanks to the Lord for his great works of deliverance. And it contained the same verses I referenced before. Give thanks to the Lord for his good and his mercy endures forever. In verse 2, it says, let the redeemed of the Lord say so, whom he has redeemed from the hands of the enemy. So the term redeemed here is the same one that was used to describe Boaz as the kinsman redeemer in the book of Ruth. And God does this for his people. He does what they cannot do for themselves by redeeming them from the power of their enemies. This verse encourages those who've experienced God's deliverance to speak up and let others know of their praise to God for his wonderful works and his wonderful works of deliverance. This psalm highlights, if you saw the pattern, it was a bit of a lengthy read, but you'd see that there was sort of like a pattern. It identified 4 kinds of people who found themselves in trouble and their stories. So the first person was the one who was lost and wandering in the desert, hungry and thirsty and distressed. They called out to God and he delivered them and satisfied their needs. The second was one who had rebelled against the words of the Lord and found themselves in prison, possibly on death row. And they too cried out to the Lord for help, and he broke their chains, cut the bars of iron, and delivered them. The third person was a foolish and sinful person who was on their way to destruction because of their iniquities and were even afflicted with sickness. They cried out to the Lord, and they were healed and restored. And the fourth person the fourth was, I think, a group of people. So what I got from it, they were either sailors and sea merchants. These were essentially people who walked on the sea and had experienced God's wonders of the seas, but then also found themselves in the midst of a storm. They cried out to God, and God calmed the storm and stilled the winds. What was the common thread here was that all these people cried out to the Lord, and he had mercy on them in spite of their situations or who they were or what they had done. And they are now all called to give thanks to the Lord for his unending mercy and love. Even though these were very specific, I think that this could be any of us in any trouble season of our lives, and the psalmist just calls you to just call upon the Lord and give thanks to him. So here's my hashtag getting to know God lesson. It's very important for us as God's people to remember his love and the things he has done for us always. If we do this, even in times of trouble, we'll continue to abide in him, walk with him, and obey him. Our faith and trust will continually grow in the God that we keep front and center. If we keep our knowledge of what we know about God front and center in our minds, we will always, trust him. And my parting shot today, based off of this lesson, is always remember that you are loved by God. And even in trouble, you are never alone. Thank you for joining me today. I hope this lesson blessed you as much as it blessed me. Tomorrow, I'll be back to share lessons from 1 Chronicles 13 to 16. Have a good day. Bye.